The Paddock Mall Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Robin, who's the actor? Is it Kirk Douglas? Kurt? Is he an older guy?
Kurt, yes.
He's an older guy?
Yes.
I think I saw him on an interview one time, and he was talking about how he was writing his autobiography, and he said, everybody should write their autobiography, because when you write your autobiography, you go back in time and you're able to actually look through with pinpoint accuracy with the things you did and maybe try to even make sense out of all of them. And I've never quite understood the difference between an autobiography and a memoir. I like the word memoir better, though. It sounds more touchy or classy or something. In the studio, we have a lady who wrote her memoir. She's Ruth Claxton. Her book, however, says that her name is Rachel G. Carrington, which is her pen name. She lives in Ocala, I think, right? Am I right about that?
That's right.
Yes. And your book is called The Early Years, and you are in the studio with your daughter, Dana. So good morning to both of you, Ruth and Dana.
Good morning.
But for those of you looking for the book, you're going to look for Rachel G. Carrington. The book, The Early Years of Memoir, Matters of the Heart, Book 1. And it says here you're a transplanted Kentuckian. Is that right?
That's correct.
How do you like this weather we're having this week?
It's more like Kentucky.
More like Kentucky. Well, thank you for coming in. You know, Robin and I interview authors all the time, and usually an author comes to us by way of a publicist. And it looks like you're working with a publicist. And,
Yes, I am.
And usually that's not the case with a local author. Usually local authors come knocking on the door. So it's interesting that you're local and you have a publicist.
I had a publicist in Ohio and in Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
I lived part of the time in Hawaii, or I did.
Uh-huh.
I changed that for Florida. I'm not sure that was a good idea.
Well, because you could drive to Kentucky. You can't drive to Kentucky from Hawaii, right? Is that where you live, Dana? You live in Kentucky?
That's why I'm here.
We live here in
Oh, you live here?
Ocala.
Oh, and that's why you're here.
Actually, I'm from Ohio.
Oh, Ohio.
Transplanted Kentucky.
Oh my gosh, I'm so confused. Ohio,
By now, I
Kentucky,
am
Florida,
too.
Hawaii. Hawaii's the one that doesn't fit, right? You can't drive there.
No.
That's the problem.
No, and I didn't plan to go back, but
So are you an author besides the memoir?
that's my first book. That was my first book.
This is your very first book.
And my husband has always wanted me to write a book. He
Was
said,
it Brad? Is your husband Brad?
Brad.
Brad, I remember remembering right from the book? Brad? Okay.
That's his pen. That's his name in the book.
Oh, that's his name in the book? Okay,
Right.
that's not his real
My
name.
husband's name was Arthur.
Oh,
I called
okay.
him Art.
Okay.
But,
You write some very personal things in the book, too. Was that hard for you to do, knowing that your daughter would read them?
No,
No?
it's something that I felt my family should all know. You know, they lived. We've been a very close family. They've always been with us. Close by, even after they were married and had families of their own. But we started to scatter when we bought vacation homes. That kind of got us scattered, and Dana brought her home down here. She's farthest away from Ohio than any of them. But I have family back in Ohio.
So I have a question for Dana. When you read the book, were you surprised by any of the things your mother wrote?
I was shocked. But in a good way.
Because she's your mom?
She's my mom, and she wasn't perfect. And I thought she was perfect, but I'm glad she's not.
Oh my goodness, now she tells me.
Now I can relax, you know?
You know, that is so honest of you. And I think that's what the book is. It's honest. You didn't worry about what people thought. You were just honest, weren't you?
Yes, I wanted to be. I wrote it specifically for my family.
That's what I
but
figured, yeah.
But the publisher just thought it would be a book that would sell.
We all love true stories. So did you find the writing process therapeutic in some way?
Very much. My husband passed away in 2008.
Oh, okay.
2009. And I was grieving, and
How did you not cry? I would have cried as I was
well,
writing some of these memories.
Of course I did,
Yeah.
in some of them. But it did me so much good to bring back all the good memories of our life. And we've had a very multifaceted life that
Did it
was a good life.
sharpen? Did it sharpen your memories at all?
it's sharpened. And the sad thing is, I always kept journals, but a flood in 1989 wiped them out.
Oh no.
And I thought I'd never be able to remember them, but one memory would trigger another one. And so fast that when I was typing, I had to have 2 screens on my computer, one to keep notes for further information further
Right.
in the book,
Right.
because other memories would come when I'd have.
So the fact that this is called Matters of the Heart, Book 1, does that mean we're going to have Book 2?
Book 2 is about 2/3 of the way done. I have an eye problem that's just developed and slowing me down quite a bit in working on my computer. So, but I have a lot of people who are waiting for that book. I have to get it out, especially my family.
How many people in your family? How many
I had
children?
7 children.
Wow.
Dana's the youngest of the 7 children.
And you have experienced different cultures throughout your life, and I know in the dedication of the book, you used an Hawaiian term.
Yes, and in fact, after we retired, we wanted to find a place to winter, and we came to Florida, and it was the year that the citrus trees all froze.
Oh, yeah,
It was
yeah,
so
yeah,
cold
yeah.
that year that we decided not to come to Florida. Texas, an island off the shore off of Texas, was another possibility, but we just didn't find it what we wanted. And my husband was stationed in World War II on Oahu. And he said, I know one place the climate is really good all the time. He said, let's try it. Well, that's all we needed to do is just go there, and we realized that that's what we wanted.
It's really good here most of the time.
Yes, now I will be. But it was 6 months in Ohio and 6 months in Hawaii the last
Oh, wow.
few years.
Wow.
You talk about your parents, and they had one path they wanted you to take, but you wanted to go differently.
And I wanted that path as well. I wanted my father was very interested in further education for me. He wanted me to go to college. He wanted me to be a teacher so that I could stay in Kentucky. At that time, you had to move out of Kentucky to find a job or whatever. But and that's what I wanted to do as well. But when I met Brad, everything changed for me. I took a different path completely, to my parents' dismay, but I've never looked back. I've never had I never ever thought that I made a mistake.
So I find it
Anyway.
interesting that you refer to him as Brad. He's fictional in the book. Why did you choose to do fictional names for real people?
It's so hard at the beginning to get a book published. It takes so long to
Right,
get all the
right.
clearances from so many people. And rather than embarrass someone,
Oh, I see. Right.
My publisher advised me to do that. Just go fictitious names and places. In the book it says Denton, Kentucky, but it's actually Corbin, Kentucky. It's where I lived.
Okay.
And but in those places, and Denton's very much like Corbin, except Denton had underground mines. Kentucky had strip mine. Corbin area had strip mines. And it was during the period when the mines were going big, the strip mines were, and then suddenly all private-owned mines were bought out by big conglomerates and closed because they were competition in a way. So my husband, we had to get away from Corbin because there was no work. And that brought us to Cincinnati. And my husband worked at General Electric. He retired from General Electric. And I worked for Hamilton City Schools for 28 years. So, but after we retired, we traveled a lot too.
So how did your husband ask you out on the first date?
He got my attention by throwing a paper wad.
Oh
And-
gosh.
How old was he?
How old was he? At the time, he was 25.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. You're already an adult, and he's 25, still 15, right? So he throws a paper wad. Where were you?
In church.
Oh my gosh.
And it was on a Wednesday night, and all the windows were open, hot summer.
Yeah.
And the big beetles that follow light were coming in, flying around the room.
gosh.
And everyone was fighting bugs. If anyone touched them, they think a bug was on them.
Exactly.
And when those paper wads were hitting my hair, I was currently...
Oh, okay. So he threw it at you. How did you know it wasn't a bug?
Well, one of my girlfriends, now, we were always taught you don't turn around and look behind you in church. So we didn't turn around, my sisters and I. But my girlfriend turned around and she says it's a good-looking man on the back seat that's throwing these paper wads. And he was waiting for me outside.
See, I'm glad women understood men back then. I don't think they understand men now. I don't think they're all upset about men.
Well, that was a popular way of meeting girls, is to go to church. It got men in church.
Oh, certainly. What your book does for the reader is that it gives them the courage to follow their own path, because that is really what holds some people back, is that courage. They don't want to disappoint others, but they want to do what they feel in their heart
Follow
to do.
your heart. Yes, that's true. And as I said, I've never been sorry that I did that. It was worth it all.
And that must
we
have
went through a
been-
lot of struggles.
And that must have been what you instilled in your children also,
Exactly.
to follow their heart.
Is that right? Was that hard to do? I mean, was it hard? It's easier for you to say, I'm going to follow my heart, than it is to tell your children to follow their heart. Only because in your world, your own world, you feel like you could survive anything. But you want your children to have what's best, you know? So go to college and study to be this or that and get a good job, right?
We always encouraged them to do the best they could in whatever avenue they chose. And I think most of them have. All of our kids are.
When in your life did you become the person you are? Were you the person you are when you were born? Was there something that happened in your teen years?
I always had a drive. I always felt that there was something better, something to work for, and I think my husband did too. And we worked together in those things. We were both strong in our own way, and of course at times we butt heads, but generally we had no problem with each other. We had a very peaceful life. We didn't fight. We would kind of fuss. I would fuss. Let's say I was a redhead and I had a little temper.
Oh, okay.
And he would sit quietly and listen. He'd say, "Are you finished?" And that'd start me over again. Then we'd both get to laughing after a bit.
Oh, that's funny.
It was just not anything serious. We always made sure we didn't go to bed angry with each other. And
That's good advice.
That is good advice.
You had brought up the word struggles earlier. Were they health struggles or financial struggles or?
both, but my husband always found a way. He could, in fact, I would worry, and he'd say, "Don't worry, I'll find a way." And he always did. He always did. I mean, there were times that when it was coming due, tax time was coming due for our property tax, and I would think, "Oh, we're not going to have enough money." "Don't worry, I'll find a way." And then he'd say sometimes, "If I don't, I'll sell a cow," because we had cattle.
Oh, okay. Well, I think sometimes when we look back at our lives, the reason we like to look back is, or the reason we wish we could go back, maybe that's the thing I want to say, is because we know how it ends. We know that there was nothing to worry about. But when you're in the present, you don't know that you're not supposed to worry
No.
about what's happening tomorrow.
No, you don't.
You had said earlier that your husband was in World War II. When you started your life together, did he show any signs of PTSD, and were you there to help him with that? I know that
No.
term was not around back then.
No, he
World War II.
didn't. And it had nothing to do with the war, but there was an incident that happened in his life that caused him to have nightmares. And it was his father and he were working in an underground coal mine, and he went out to get a tool that was outside the mine, went back, and a large piece of slate had fallen on his dad.
Oh,
And they worked in real tight areas that you had to lie on their back and work.
Oh, wow.
And it had fallen on his dad, and he said he doesn't know how to this day he got that off of him, but because he was only 12 years old.
Wow.
And he lifted it, and his dad was able to wiggle out from under it.
He survived?
He
thank
survived
God for
He-
that.
Wow. So did you have to do any research in your own life? Like, did you forget some things and you said, wait a minute, I got to figure this out. Where was I?
Dates mostly,
Yeah.
because I had to be very careful, because my book is segmented by date, actually. I mean, the incidents as they happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to be careful because, well, you just have to make sure that things are right. And that was my research, mainly.
Obviously, the war would have an effect on your private life, but did anything else in the world stage affect you privately? Like, I kind of often think this, like I watch the news and I'm so worried about this, that, and the other thing. I'll think, well, it doesn't affect me. Now, a war does, but besides that, was there anything that affected you?
Well, the returning of soldiers from the war was making the job market hard because the companies were having to take. Of course, they took all the service people back,
Right.
and women who had those jobs no longer had them, and it was really hard for women to come in and get a job in a place that it's usually was considered a man's job. It was at that time.
Yeah.
And
I want to go back to the first date. So he threw paper at you. Did he ask you out, or what happened? How did you go out?
we were taught not to talk to boys, and I was 16, so I just ignored him and went on by, and went down to the corner, which was about maybe 150 feet from where his car was parked, and he and his friend were standing by the car, and my sisters, two of them with me, especially one was saying, "Say yes, say yes." He wanted to walk me down the street.
Okay, can I walk you down the street is what he said.
Yes.
Okay.
And they said, "Say yes," and I wasn't about to because I knew the consequences at home. And then my sister Dot, who was next to me in age, turned around and yelled back. She said yes.
Oh no!
If it hadn't been for her, I'd never
So
made
what
it.
happened? He walked with you?
He walked down to the corner where I was and asked if I'd ride home with him, and that was a no. You didn't get in the car.
No.
And he said, "Would it be all right if I walked with you?" And I thought, well, my sisters are with me. Yes, it'd be all right. So he walked home with me.
And did you talk about something? Do you remember what you talked about?
We talked about a lot, and it was only like maybe 10 blocks to walk home, so it wasn't a lot of time. But we covered a lot, and he told me practically everything I need to know about him.
Oh, really?
But he failed to tell me that he was married.
Oh!
And I found that out the Sunday morning following that at church.
Yeah.
From one
Oh,
of the
must have broke
girls.
your heart. Did you start to have a crush on him already?
Oh,
Yeah.
and immediately, I felt attracted to him. But anyway, when I found it out, he said, well, that's something that we didn't have time for, but I want to talk about that. And he told me that he'd come home to a wrecked marriage from service, and that he had two children, and he'd been trying to make a go of it, but it wasn't going to work. And he decided that if he ever had a life of his own, he's going to have to.
So what made it work with you? What was the difference? Was it you? Was it him? Was it both of you?
I don't know. For me, it was love at first sight. He says for him it was too. An attraction. And I wasn't even allowed to date, so it was really a struggle to be able to see him, and especially after my parents found out that he was married.
Dana, do you have a special place for crumbled up pieces of paper? Like that, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a crumbled up piece of paper.
Exactly. I'd be throwing spitwads.
You should put a crumbled up piece of paper in a frame or a shadow box or something. This is my beginnings.
She's more like her dad than any of the other children.
In what way? In what way?
Ways that she does things, things that she says sometimes. And a lot of her personality.
You have fun things in your book, and you have emotional things in your book. So was that one of the difficult parts to write, was when your emotions started flaring up?
No, I was kind of removed from it now. I mean, at this point.
The cover is very attractive. It shows a young couple on a path, looks like through the woods, and he's kissing her on the forehead. It looks like it's a cold day. Does that represent
In the fall,
a real time in your life?
Our first fall together.
Okay.
We walked in woods. We loved to go for walks in woods, especially when the leaves were down. And that picture is not a picture. I mean, it was just an artist's rendition of something.
Sure. But it
chose.
Is based on something you actually had?
On a very important time of our courtship.
Who are the people on the back of the book? Are they?
That was to be my husband and children. When my husband when we had to go to Ohio, my husband first went to check the job market out and got a job right away. And he had to stay, I think he was gone 2 weeks before he could come back home. And when he came home, the kids just about smothered him because they all piled in the bed with him. And
Aww.
And
Oh, wow.
And as the kids loved on him, I could see him wipe tears. So
Well, you get the award for the sweetest interview of the year. This is the sweetest interview of the whole year, 2017, and then this week. The book is called The Early Years. It's a memoir by Ruth Claxton. That's her real name, but her pen name is Rachel Carrington. Where does the name come from, Rachel Carrington?
It's Rachel G. Carrington, and that G is important simply because there is another author by the name of Rachel Carrington.
Oh, okay.
That just is simply my initials, Ruth G. Claxton, Rachel G. Carrington.
Ah, I see. Okay.
And it just sounded good to me. I didn't know that at the beginning. Glad I put the G in there because that's the only way you can find that book. And The Early Years is a very common name for books, and I didn't know that either.
How about the grandchildren? Are they reading the book?
They've all read it.
Yeah?
Yes.
Are they surprised? Because it's one thing to think of mom. It's another thing to think of grandma.
They never talked to me about that. They loved the book. They loved their grandpa. I mean, the boys, the grandsons who are boys in the family learned so much from him, work ethics. And I know at his funeral that was mentioned by one of his grandsons, said, I know I got my work ethics from Papa. They'd call him Papa or Grandpa.
And will you be having any book signings set up, do you think, in the near future?
I haven't thought about it here. I had a lot in Kentucky and Ohio. Possibly.
They do them in like Barnes & Noble, right? They do book signings there all the time.
And
also
Barnes
in
&
the
Noble has my
villages,
book,
too.
not in the store, but online.
Online.
So that's my next question. Where do we get the book? Sounds like Barnes & Noble, online. Amazon?
Amazon.
I think that's where I found the cover that I'm putting on the podcast. So
Amazon is one of the biggest sellers of the of books, I think. But yes, that's where most people have bought theirs, and the reviews on Amazon have been really good.
Yes, they were. I found it. Here it is. Yes, 21 customers gave it 5 stars. Wow.
So many.
Across the board, 5 stars. Wow, good for you. Good for you. Thank you for coming in.
I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Dana, was it hard to compare reading this book to any other book you've ever read? This has got to be certain. You must have breezed through this like nothing.
Well, I took my time reading it the first time, and then I read it 3-4 times since then.
Oh, really?
And every time I'm seeing something new, and I just love it. It just makes me feel so.
Wow.
It's
Warm inside.
Yeah.
Ladies, you have given us the sweetest moment in this studio in a long time. Thank you for being in here with us today.
Thank you.
That was fun. All right, we will be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
Tired of looking at stained carpets, dirty tile, or grout? Call Silverback Restoration, 414-5312. Make your flooring look great again. Stains, pet odors, allergies. Call Silverback Restoration, 414-5312.